Today I'm going to show you one of the easiest ways to cook the perfect steak. And trust me, this is going to be one of the best steaks you've ever had. And I'm starting with the USDA Prime Ribeye. Ribeyes are one of the most common steaks that you'll see at your grocery store, and they're one of the easiest cuts to cook. They don't require much preparation, and they are absolutely delicious. They're always gonna be tender, juicy, absolutely amazing. So the ribeye is made out of two major muscles, the eye of the ribeye, or the longus dorsi, and the ribeye cap, or the spinalis dorsi. This one is closer to the chuck end, so it also has this little muscle right here. I would recommend finding a ribeye with a larger cap, as this cap is absolutely delicious. It is way more tender and super flavorful. This steak right here is closer to the chuck or the shoulder of the cow, and that's why it has a bigger cap muscle. I would recommend talking to your local butcher to get a ribeye with the biggest spinalis possible. This steak is USDA Prime and is absolutely amazing. USDA Prime is going to have a lot more of that inner muscular fat and is really going to add more flavor to that steak. However, choice grade is always great and is your average supermarket beef that you can find pretty much anywhere. I would recommend a nice and thick steak. Anywhere from about 1 to 2 inches in thickness is great. Having a decently thick steak ensures that you get a nice crust on the outside without overcooking the inside. When I choose my steaks, I also like to have a thin fat cap. This will render out nicely in the pan. Now we'll go ahead and season our steak. I'm using kosher salt, and we're going to be dry brining this steak. Essentially what this means is we're going to be salting our steak about an hour or two prior to cooking. This is going to give us a nice dry exterior, which is going to help us get a nice strong crust. This will also season our steak throughout. So we'll sprinkle on some salt, making sure to season all sides generously. We'll go ahead and roll the edges. Now I'll go ahead and place on a wire rack, and I'll let this sit in my fridge for about 1 to 2 hours. You can go as long as overnight, but for me, 1 to 2 hours is perfect. If you don't have time to do this, I would recommend seasoning your steak minutes or seconds before placing it in a pan. Okay, so while our steak is dry brining, let's go ahead and prepare our basting ingredients. This is that butter mixture we're gonna spoon over our steak. So we have some fresh thyme, fresh rosemary, garlic, and about half a stick of butter. I find that anywhere from a third to a half a stick of butter is good. You wanna make sure the butter isn't burning and that you have enough to spoon over your steak. So for our garlic, I'm only gonna use about 3 cloves. The knife, press down. This is gonna give you some nice crushed garlic and it's gonna help release those aromatics. This for me is one of the easiest and simplest and most delicious techniques to cook a steak. Pan searing and butter basting really takes your steak to a whole other level. And before we get started on cooking our steak, something that I recommend if you are brand new to cooking or just wanna know exactly the internal temperature of your steak, I'm aiming for medium rare. So for me, anywhere from about 130 to 135 is perfect. These are Insta-Read thermometers, and these are really ideal for getting a perfectly cooked steak. I highly recommend these meat thermometers. So today I'm going to be using this cast iron pan right here. You can also use a stainless steel pan. You want to make sure that your pan can hold the heat. After our steak has dry brined, I'll go ahead and take it off the wire rack. You can really see that super dry exterior. Now I'll go ahead and add on some freshly cracked black pepper, making sure to season all sides. I like to keep the seasoning very simple, so salt and pepper is all you need for this high quality piece of beef. Roll it around. And before cooking, if you see that your ribeye cap is starting to separate, it's perfectly okay. You can tresson it with butcher's twine. For me, this looks pretty good, so I'm not gonna tie it up. You can always tie it up just around here with some butcher's twine. And now this is ready for the pan. Now I recommend using a really high smoke point oil. I'm using avocado oil. This is one of my favorite oils to use when cooking a steak. Once your oil is smoking hot, I'll go ahead and lay my steak down. To make sure that your steak touches the pan evenly, you can press down, or you can also use a grill press or a chef's press and just set that on top. This will ensure that the steak touches the pan evenly so you can get a nice sear. And I will leave this here to develop a crust for about 1 to 1.5 minutes. Now after about a minute or so, or once you start to see a nice crust here form, I'm going to go ahead and flip the steak. And I'll sear this side for another minute. Now that we got a good sear on our steak, I'm going to go ahead and render this fat on top. We'll just turn that around like so, and we'll render this out for about 20 to 30 seconds. Now I'll lower the heat and add my stick of butter. I'll add in my rosemary, thyme, and crushed garlic. Now I'll let the butter melt, taking a spoon and spooning over that butter and baste. Getting all those aromatics all over. Putting the aromatics on top is also a great way to infuse more flavor. Flipping our steak halfway through basting. Now that my steak has reached an internal temperature of about 130 degrees Fahrenheit, I'll go ahead and take it out of the pan, and I'm gonna rest this on a wire rack. Okay, so now I have my steak on a clean wire rack, and we're gonna let this rest for about 6 minutes, or about half the time that you cooked it. What resting does is it lets all the juices concentrate into the steak, so when you slice into it, all those juices don't go all out on your cutting board. The wire rack gives it better airflow, and it also helps protect the bottom crust from getting soggy. The wire rack also gives good air circulation, and while you're resting your steak is continuing to cook over. That's why I always pull my steaks 5 degrees before my desired internal temperature. This helps get the perfect result for me. Okay, now I'm gonna go ahead and put this on a serving board, and we'll take it off the wire rack. Now after all this hard work, let's go ahead and slice into it. The way I like to slice into my ribeye is to remove that ribeye from the ribeye cap, and now we'll slice into the eye of the ribeye to get that perfect medium rare. And let me just tell you, this cuts like absolute butter and is super tender. So after all this hard work, I'm super excited to try this steak out. Let's do it. Beautiful medium rare. Cheers. Whoa, super tender, super juicy, super flavorful. Dry brine gave that strong crust, butter base, that juicy flavor, awesome flavor from the prime grade beef. This was absolutely delicious. I highly recommend trying this, and it is an absolutely amazing and simple way to cook a steak at home. Huge thank you. Hope you guys enjoyed and learned something. Like this video, subscribe if you haven't already, and comment down below what cut of steak is your favorite. Again, hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next video.